Imagine finding out that um, the things you spend your entire life fighting for, your salary, your social status, even just like the square footage of your house, that all of it is actually just a disguise.
Right, a disguise worn by, well, a hideous green-eyed witch.
Exactly. Just pouring your life energy into this illusion that is actually actively trying to destroy you.
It is an incredibly jarring thought. I mean, it really forces an immediate reevaluation of everything we just consider, normal in our daily routine.
It really does. And it sits at the very center of this massive universal contradiction that we all just kind of live with. Because every single day, you and I, we receive this barrage of messaging telling us to, strive for success, build wealth, conquer the material world.
Yeah, hustle culture, basically.
Right. But simultaneously, we are warned by almost every major spiritual tradition that worldly attachment is a poison, that it literally rots the human soul. So, like, how are you supposed to actually live with that tension?
That tension is exactly the central mystery we are unpacking today. And we are pulling from a really fascinating, highly diverse stack of sources for this deep dive.
Yeah, we've got some great material today.
We do. We're looking at an academic thesis analyzing Martin Luther's theology right alongside the modern Nigerian neo-Pentecostal prosperity gospel. We also have some theological writings unpacking the complex Islamic concept of fitna.
And a historical overview of Prophet Suleiman, right, also known as Solomon.
Exactly. And grounding all of this, we have the 11th century psychological and spiritual masterpiece by Al-Ghazali, The Alchemy of Happiness.
So the mission for this deep dive is to synthesize all these varied traditions and extract, well, the ultimate spiritual alchemy. We want to figure out how these sources view wealth, how they interpret human suffering, and what they claim is the actual underlying purpose of our journey here.
And just as a quick constraint check before we really jump in, we are exploring these concepts strictly impartially.
Right, no sides being taken today.
Exactly. We are just looking at what the source texts say without taking any theological or political sides. We are simply here as guides, just uncovering the fascinating mechanics and insights within the material itself.
So to even begin evaluating wealth or suffering,
Right.
the sources demand that we first define the environment. Like, we have to understand what this material world actually is.
And Al-Ghazali gives us a framework for that is just psychologically fascinating. Because he doesn't just call the world a temporary stage, he personifies it.
A witch.
Yes, he describes the material world as a radiant, immoral sorceress. Her entire function is to seduce men, to fondle them, to make them fall madly in love with her, only to then abruptly abandon them to their enemies.
So the world is actively deceptive. I mean, it presents itself as a lover, but it's actually a trap.
And he pushes that imagery to a terrifying conclusion, really. Al-Ghazali writes that on Judgment Day, this sorceress is stripped of all her illusions. She appears in her true form, which is this hideous witch with green eyes and projecting teeth. Yeah, the texts describe men looking at her in absolute horror, just suddenly realizing this monster is what they sacrifice their integrity for. And the angels look at humanity and say, basically, this is the world for whose sake you quarreled and fought and embittered one another's lives.
That reframes the whole daily rat race completely. I mean, the things we are fighting over aren't just meaningless, they are an active disguise. But, how do we actually fall for it? If it's a trap, why are we all so easily caught?
Well, Al-Ghazali explains the psychology of that trap through the parable of the ship.
Okay, break that down for us.
So he asks us to imagine a vessel that stops at a well-wooded, really beautiful island. The captain allows the passengers to disembark for a short break, but he gives a strict warning, do not delay because the ship will leave.
Standard cruise ship rules.
Right, exactly. So the wisest group of passengers, they take a very brief walk, they handle their necessities, and they return immediately. And because they are early, they secure the best, most comfortable seats on the empty ship.
They understand the assignment. The island isn't the point, the ship is the point.
Precisely. Now, the second group loses focus. They linger, they admire the exotic foliage, they listen to the birds, and by the time they remember the ship, they have to rush back.
But they make it.
They make it, yes, but the best seats are gone. They have to settle for these less comfortable, cramped spots for the rest of the journey.
So they still survive, they just have an uncomfortable ride.
Right. But then you get to the third group. These passengers wander deep into the island's interior, and they discover brilliantly colored stones.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they become completely obsessed. They fill their pockets, their bags, their arms with these heavy stones, and they struggle back to the ship at the very last second.
Let me guess. No good seats left at all.
None. They are relegated to the dark, cramped lower decks. And in the darkness of the hull, they realize the stones have completely lost their luster. The brilliant colors were just a trick of the island's light. Now they are just trapped with these heavy, useless burdens that crush them in the dark.
And the final group doesn't even make it back at all, do they?
No, they wander so far, just totally hypnotized by the island, that they miss the captain's final call entirely. The ship sails away without them, and they are left behind to perish of hunger or be destroyed by wild beasts.
You know, that third group, the ones hoarding the stones, is so recognizable. It makes me think of a modern parallel.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this whole parable operates exactly like a long airport layover.
Okay, I can see that.
Like, you get off your first flight, you have a 2-hour layover, and your only real job is to walk to Terminal B to catch your connecting flight. But instead, you wander into the giant, glowing, duty-free shop. You get entirely mesmerized.
Right, all the shiny things.
Exactly. You start loading your carry-on bags with overpriced souvenirs, 3 different bottles of expensive perfume, giant Toblerones you don't even like.
The massive Toblerones, yes.
You load yourself down with so much heavy garbage that you literally miss the final boarding call for your connecting flight. Your final destination was the entire reason you were traveling, but you got fundamentally trapped in the layover.
The genius of your layover analogy is that it really highlights the sheer absurdity of the behavior. Because nobody in their right mind builds a permanent house in Terminal B.
Right.
Yet, psychologically, that is precisely what Al-Ghazali argues we do with our lives. The island or the duty-free shop is the material world. The ship or your connecting flight is the journey of the soul. Those shiny stones are the wealth, the status, the worldly attachments we just relentlessly hoard.
I am totally tracking with logic here, but I do have a major pushback.
Okay, let's hear it.
Does this mean we're supposed to just hate the world entirely? Because if I take this literally, I should just go sit on the carpet at the airport gate, stare blankly at the wall, and refuse to eat a sandwich or buy a coffee until the plane arrives. I mean, that sounds like a miserable, ascetic existence.
That is a fair point, and Al-Ghazali actually anticipates that exact pushback. He is not advocating for total ascetic misery. He clarifies the mechanism of how we should live using another framework, which is the body as a steed, or like a riding horse.
Okay, so the physical body and its needs are the transportation.
Correct. In this model, the soul is the rider, and the rider absolutely must feed and care for the steed to complete the journey. If you refuse to feed the horse, or you refuse to let it rest, the horse dies, and you, the rider, perish in the middle of the desert.
So we do need the sandwich at the airport.
Exactly. We have animal qualities, we need food, sleep, shelter, companionship. Those are perfectly legitimate requirements. But we also have angelic qualities, which is our capacity to contemplate the divine and seek higher purpose.
So it's a hierarchy of needs, essentially.
Yes. The crucial mechanism is that the animal qualities must serve the angelic ones. You feed the horse so it can carry you. But if the rider forgets the destination and spends all their time obsessing over the steed's decorations, brushing its hair all day, buying it diamond-studded saddles, feeding it exotic treats, while completely ignoring the actual journey, they will never ditch the destination.
So the world is a tool. It has massive utility, but the exact moment it transitions from utility to obsession, you're dead in the water.
That is the dividing line right there.
But if the goal is just to feed the horse enough to keep moving, we have a massive contradiction on our hands when we look at modern religion. Because huge sectors of the religious world seem entirely obsessed with buying the horse a diamond-studded saddle.
Which brings us to the academic thesis on Neo-Pentecostalism in Nigeria.
Yes. The contrast here is incredibly sharp. We are moving from Al-Ghazali's warning against the shiny stones straight into a theology that views those shiny stones as the ultimate proof of divine favor.
And the scale of this is staggering. The thesis focuses on Nigeria, a country of over 160 million people characterized by extreme wealth disparity and poverty. And right in the epicenter of that economic struggle, the prosperity gospel is not just growing, it is exploding.
Right. The text highlights Bishop David Oyedepo's Winners Chapel, which managed to build a 50,000-seat hexagonal megachurch. And they built that massive infrastructure in just 1 year.
Yeah, it's incredible. And to understand why this thrives, we have to look at the sociological mechanism. In a landscape with such stark inequality and often a real lack of structural social safety nets, theology steps in to fill the void. The church basically becomes the primary vehicle for upward mobility and hope.
And the doctrine driving it, according to the text, is Bishop Oyedepo's specific 3-point theological framework on poverty.
Break those down for us.
So first, he preaches that poverty is not a virtue. It is actually a sin brought on by the fall of man. Second, the atonement of Jesus literally replaces the material blessings that humanity lost. And third, choosing to remain poor is actually a sin against Jesus' redemption.
It completely flips the traditional script. I mean, in this theological framework, asceticism or detachment isn't pious, it's an insult to the divine sacrifice. Wealth is reframed as a guaranteed structural right of faith.
Exactly. And the text details the primary mechanism they use to activate this wealth, called seed faith, or the law of reciprocity. It's highly transactional.
It operates almost like, well, divine investment banking. The underlying logic is that financial donations to the ministry are seeds. When you sow a seed, it forces a miraculous multiplied financial return from God.
So you aren't just giving to charity.
No, you are triggering a supernatural return on investment.
And the psychological grip of this mechanism is intense. I mean, the thesis shares a story of a poor man who stole 24 million naira, which is over $150,000 from his employer.
Wow.
Yeah, and he didn't steal it to buy a sports car. He stole it to pay a tithe to his church. Like, how does the cognitive dissonance of that even work?
Well, the thief is operating under a hacked moral framework. In his mind, he isn't a criminal committing a secular crime. He is an aggressive spiritual investor.
Right.
He fully expected that by sowing that massive stolen seed into the church, God would be obligated by the law of reciprocity to give him double the amount in return. It really highlights the profound danger of treating the divine as a vending machine. When your theology equates material wealth directly with spiritual righteousness, the pressure to manifest money can completely override basic morality.
So, if the prosperity gospel views wealth as an absolute right, how does that contrast with historical figures who actually possessed unimaginable wealth? The source material on Prophet Solomon paints a very different picture of a billionaire believer.
Prophet Suleiman is the ultimate counter-narrative, honestly, because he possessed a level of power and wealth that makes modern billionaires look impoverished. According to the historical and religious texts, Suleiman commanded a kingdom that included not just human armies, but the winds, the animal kingdom, and the jinn.
He had literal dominion over the elements. I mean, that is the ultimate shiny stone.
It is, but the defining characteristic of Suleiman is his internal psychological posture toward that power. He never internalized it as a personal achievement or a right. He viewed his vast empire as a terrifying divine test.
A test, as in God giving him everything just to see if his ego would consume him.
Precisely. Because when you have the power to command the wind, the temptation toward tyranny, arrogance, and playing God is absolute. But the sources highlight how Suleiman actively weaponized humility against his own power.
Like with the Queen of Sheba.
Yes, Bilqis. With his resources, he could have effortlessly waged a war of annihilation to conquer her territory. Instead, he utilized his wealth for peaceful diplomacy. He sent her a letter inviting her to faith. He didn't view his kingdom as a weapon, he viewed it as a diplomatic tool.
The texts even mention a moment where God temporarily removed his kingdom to test him, and Suleiman didn't throw a tantrum about his divine rights being violated. He just turned back in profound humility.
Because he recognized that the wealth was never his to begin with. He was a king who constantly prayed for the ability to remain grateful. His immense wealth was purified by his absolute detachment from it.
I'm seeing a stark dividing line here. The modern prosperity gospel treats wealth as a guaranteed reward for faith, but the historical texts on Suleiman treat wealth as a highly dangerous radioactive test of a person's humility.
Exactly.
But that raises a massive question. If wealth is a test, what is poverty? What is suffering? If we follow the prosperity logic, suffering implies you simply lack faith.
And that specific assumption is what Martin Luther aggressively attacked back in the 16th century. The academic thesis brings Luther into dialogue with the modern prosperity movement to highlight this clash. Luther coined a term for the prosperity mindset. He called it the theology of glory.
Meaning, I align myself with God so I get to share in the glory. I get the victory, the health, the massive church, the bank account.
Exactly. It's a theology that seeks the benefits of the divine without the sacrifice. In opposition to this, Luther championed the theology of the cross. He argued that God's nature is most profoundly revealed not in earthly triumph or unshakable success, but in suffering, weakness, and crucifixion.
I'm struggling to see the practical mechanics of that. Like, how does suffering reveal anything other than just pain?
Luther explains it through the destruction of the ego. He divides people into friends of the cross and enemies of the cross.
Okay.
Think about a massive mundane failure in your life. Say you build a company and it goes completely bankrupt. or a relationship you tied your identity to falls apart. In a theology of glory, that agonizing failure means God abandoned you.
Because you didn't get the glory.
Right. But Luther argues that the suffering is the actual mechanism that crucifies your self-reliance. It shatters the illusion that you are in control. The Friends of the Cross understand that this painful stripping away of the ego forces a true reliance on God. The enemies of the cross hate suffering because it demands the death of their worldly pride.
That concept bridges beautifully to the Islamic texts we reviewed on fitna. The linguistic origins of that word provide the perfect visual for what Luther is describing.
Oh, unpack that Arabic root for us, because it really changes the entire calculus of how we view hardship.
So the Arabic word fitna is usually translated in English simply as a test or a trial, but the specific ancient linguistic root of the word originates from the practice of metallurgy.
Metallurgy, really?
Yeah, it describes the literal, physical process of throwing raw gold and silver into a blazing furnace to melt it down so that the pure, valuable metal separates from the useless dross and impurities.
So the fire isn't there to destroy the gold. It is the only mechanism that can actually purify it.
Right. And the sources show how the Quran broadens the concept of fitna. It can mean persecution, falling into hypocrisy, confusing truth with falsehood, or burning with fire. But the scholar Ibn al-Qayyim adds a layer that just blew my mind.
What did he say?
He noted that God's fitna, this purifying furnace, tests humanity with bad things, like calamities and poverty, and it tests them with good things.
Wait, I'm struggling with the mechanics of this. How do good things act as a fire? How is a promotion or a windfall of cash a furnace?
Because wealth and comfort melt the ego just as effectively as poverty, but in a much more deceptive way. If you are given immense wealth, the fire is testing whether you will become arrogant, whether you will hoard it, or whether you will use it justly like Suleiman.
Wow. It is absolute spiritual metallurgy.
Exactly.
If you are thrown into the fire of poverty and suffering, like Luther's theology of the cross, the flames burn away your pride. If you are thrown into the fire of immense wealth, the flames burn away your illusions of self-sufficiency. The furnace is just designed to reveal what you are actually made of.
Which is why pursuing wealth as an inherent right without recognizing it as a test is so lethal. If you don't realize the duty-free shop is a furnace, you won't realize you are burning until it's too late.
We have covered a lot of ground here. We have the deceptive sorceress, the passengers hoarding heavy stones, the theology of the cross, and the blazing furnace of fitna.
It is intellectually stimulating, for sure. But practically, how do we live this out? Like, if I buy into this philosophy, shouldn't I just become a monk, pack up, move to a cave, take a vow of silence, and avoid the furnace entirely?
That is the instinctual reaction, definitely. But Al-Ghazali's Alchemy of Happiness provides a highly structured, non-monastic framework for surviving the daily reality of the world. He starts with a practice of daily microscopic self-examination.
Okay.
He advises us to treat every single day as if it were a bonus round, an extra day of life you weren't supposed to get.
A shift from entitlement to deep gratitude.
Exactly. He visualizes this through the metaphor of 24 treasure chests, representing the hours of a single day. He asks the reader to imagine standing at the resurrection. These chests are brought forward and open one by one in front of you.
I am picturing it.
So an hour you spent doing good, feeding the steed properly or serving others, that chest is opened and it radiates a blinding, beautiful light.
I assume an hour spent indulging the sorceress looks very different.
Very. An hour spent in deliberate sin or cruelty is opened, and it is pitch dark, emitting a foul, suffocating odor. But the most psychologically devastating chest is the third one.
What's the third one?
An hour of pure idleness. A time where you did nothing bad but nothing good, you just wasted it. That chest is opened and it is simply empty. Al-Ghazali argues that the regret of staring into that empty void, knowing you had the capacity to fill it with light but chose apathy, is a unique kind of agony.
Wow, that makes every hour carry massive weight. But again, to my monk question, we have to live normal lives. We listen to music, we get married, we try to enjoy our families. How does Al-Ghazali handle the mundane joys of human existence?
He handles them with a nuance that completely rejects mindless asceticism. Take music and dance, for instance. He doesn't issue a blanket ban on them. He analyzes them as neutral tools.
So they aren't inherently bad.
Right. He says music is lawful and can actually induce spiritual elevation if it fans a pre-existing flame of divine love in your heart. But it becomes unlawful and destructive if it stirs up dormant, sensual, worldly desires. The exact same song can elevate one person and corrupt another, depending entirely on the internal state of the listener.
And what about building a family?
He deeply encourages marriage. He sees it as vital for raising children, maintaining a household, and providing necessary relaxation for the mind.
But there's a catch, right?
There's a warning.
Yeah.
He warns that it is a profound responsibility that can easily become a trap. If a person has a terrible disposition, or if a spouse constantly pressures their partner to earn an unlawful livelihood just to support the family's insatiable worldly desires.
Oh, like the man stealing the $150,000 for a tithe.
Exactly. If you do that, that marriage actively destroys one's spiritual capital.
It constantly comes back to internal attachments. Which brings us to the most striking, visceral imagery in Al-Ghazali's text regarding the afterlife. The source mentions that unbelievers will be tormented by 99 snakes, and each snake has 9 heads.
Yeah, that imagery is intense.
When I first read that, it sounded like a classic medieval horror story designed just to scare peasants.
It does read like pure mythological terror. But Al-Ghazali's explanation of those snakes showcases a psychological insight that was honestly centuries ahead of its time. He explicitly states these are not literal external reptiles waiting in a physical pit to bite you.
So what are they?
They are the physical manifestation of our own internal attachments. The snakes are our greed, our jealousy, our hypocrisy, our obsession with our careers, our addiction to status.
So the monsters are already living inside of us right now.
Yes. And the tragedy is that a person who deeply loves the material world doesn't realize they are infected with these parasites. The noise and comfort of the world act as an anesthetic.
Oh, I see where this is going.
But at the moment of death, the material world is violently stripped away. The anesthetic wears off. The sudden absolute absence of their wealth, their titles, and their physical comforts acts exactly like a snake bite of pure, agonizing withdrawal.
That is a staggering parallel to modern neuroscience and addiction. I mean, the pain isn't a punishment being arbitrarily inflicted by an angry God from the outside. The pain is the natural, unavoidable consequence of having your worldly addictions forcibly removed cold turkey.
Exactly. We carry the instruments of our own punishment inside us. The withdrawal from the things you turned into your gods is the very definition of the hell you experience.
If you spend your entire life wandering that island, frantically hoarding the shiny stones at the airport layover, when the plane finally takes off without you, those stones literally become the snakes.
That is the ultimate alchemy of the material world.
Looking back at the massive landscape we've crossed today, we started with the seductive illusion of the sorceress. We examined the massive megachurches of Nigeria, where the theology of Gloria tends to hack the divine for material gain.
Right, the vending machine god.
Yeah. And then we watched Martin Luther locate God not in victory, but in the agonizing, ego-crushing reality of the cross. We saw the graceful, terrifying abundance of Prophet Suleiman, who viewed his empire as a furnace.
The ultimate spiritual metallurgy.
We walked through that purifying fire of fitna, and finally we opened Al-Ghazali's 24 treasure chests, forcing us to confront the 99 internal snakes of our own making.
It demands a complete paradigm shift in how we evaluate our daily choices.
It really does. And speaking directly to you, listening to this right now, you are navigating a culture that constantly, relentlessly screams at you to gather as many shiny stones as possible. Society tells you that duty-free shop is the entire point of existence. But as we've learned from centuries of profound tradition, those stones are going to lose their luster when your ship finally departs.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today, something to carry with you after this audio stops. Take a hard look at your life and try to identify the snakes you might be quietly, carefully cultivating right now.
That's a scary thought.
It is. If your bank account, your career title, your reputation, and your physical comforts vanished entirely tomorrow morning, what would actually be left of your core identity? Are you spending your limited hours building a temporary empire in the layover terminal, or are you packing light, preparing your soul for the final destination?
That is the question we all have to answer. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the map, keep an eye on the duty-free shop, and we will catch you next time.